Good morning, my dear students. Welcome you to the online classes. I hope you are doing good. This video is for class 7, subject Geography, chapter 8, Study of Continents Africa. Today we are going to discuss about the continent Africa part 1. In this video I will be covered the following topics: introduction, location, the land. So let's begin. In this slide you are going to learn about the facts and figures. Major mountains: Atlas Mountain, Ethiopian Highlands, Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya, Mount Elgon, Mount Rwenzori, and Drakensberg. Highest mountain, Kilimanjaro. Longest river, Nile. Major lakes, Victoria, Malawi, Tanganyika, and Chad. Major desert, Sahara, Kalahari, and Namib. Chief crops, maize, millets, wheat, rice, cassava, yam, cotton, oil palm, groundnuts, sugarcane, coffee, and cocoa. Chief minerals and fuels: diamond, gold, platinum, iron ore, copper, chromium, and petroleum. Chief cities: Cairo, Algiers, Lagos, Dakar, Nairobi, Harare, Kampala, Khartoum, Johannesburg, and Cape Town. Now let's see the introduction. Africa was the home of the oldest known humans. It is the second largest continent on the earth. Most of Africa was unknown to the outside world till the middle of the 19th century. That is why the Europeans called it is the dark continent. Africa's steep plateaus, vast deserts, dense forests, swamps, and the lack of good harbors discouraged travelers and traders from going there. David Livingstone was one of the first Europeans to explore Africa. The great variety of Africa's landscape and wildlife now attract large numbers of tourists every year. Location: the continent Africa is divided almost right through the middle by the equator. The Tropic of Cancer north of the equator and the Tropic of Capricorn south of the equator also passes through Africa. The greater part of Africa thus lies in the zone between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. This zone, called the tropical or torrid zone, is the hottest zone on the earth. So, the temperature over most of Africa is high throughout the year. Africa is separated from Europe by the Mediterranean Sea. It almost touches Europe in the northwest at the Strait of Gibraltar. In the northeast, the Isthmus of Suez joins Africa with Asia. South of this isthmus, the Red Sea divides the two continents. The Suez Canal, built on the Isthmus of Suez, now separates Africa and Asia and joins the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. The land, mountains and plateaus. Almost the whole of Africa is formed of a large plateau. Within this large plateau are a number of smaller plateaus of different elevations. The plateaus have steep sides and their surface are quite uneven. The African plateau is higher in the eastern and southern regions. The particularly steep southern edge of the plateau forms the mountain range called the Drakensberg. Several mountains rise above the plateau. The Ethiopian highlands in the northeast are the most extensive mountain region in Africa. The Ethiopian highlands in the northeast are the most extensive mountain region in Africa. These mountains are of a volcanic origin. In the eastern part of the plateau, the region near the equator has a number of volcanic mountains. Among these are Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya, and Mount Elgon. Kilimanjaro is the highest mountain of Africa. Which is the highest mountain of Africa? Kilimanjaro is the highest mountain of Africa. Despite being in the hot equatorial region, it is capped with snow. In the Urensroy mountain range located in the same region, however, is not of a volcanic origin. There are some parallel ranges of mountains in northwestern Africa. These mountains overlooking the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea are called the Atlas Mountains. Mount Tubkal is the highest peak in these ranges. Plains. Lowland plains are found only in the northern and western parts of the continent. Lowland plains are found only in the northern and western parts of the continent. A narrow strip of lowland runs all along the coast, but the coastal lowlands are far above the sea level. Besides, they are very narrow. This is because the plateau drops sharply down to the sea. Rivers flow down the steep slopes and fall into the sea immediately. Rift valleys. One of the most important physical features of Africa is a chain of rift valleys in the eastern part of the African plateau. One of the most important physical feature of Africa is a chain of rift valleys in the eastern part of the African plateau. This chain of rift valleys is called the Great Rift Valley. It extends from the river Zambezi in the south to the Red Sea and onward into Asia in the north. The Rift Valleys have a number of deep lakes. The lakes Rukwa, Tanganyika, Kivu, Edward, and Albert lie in an arc in a western Rift Valley of the chain. Tanganyika is the second deepest lake in the world. Which is the second deepest lake in the world? Tanganyika is the second deepest lake in the world. Lakes Victoria and Chad are not in rift valleys. Deserts. Africa has vast deserts. The Sahara, the largest hot desert in the world. It spreads over almost the whole of northern Africa. This part of Africa is hot and dry except the land along the Mediterranean Sea in the north. The Sahara covers about one-third of the continent. There are some smaller deserts, the Kalahari and the Namib in the southern part of Africa. Forests and grasslands. The region around the equator is very hot and wet throughout the year. The region around the equator is very hot and wet throughout the year. This area is covered with a dense forest known as tropical rainforest. These forests of tall, broad-leaved trees are also called selvas. They have mainly evergreen trees which do not shed all their leaves at one time. Hence, they remain green throughout the year. As one moves away from the equatorial region, the temperature and annual rainfall begin to decrease both to the north and south of the equator. The thick rainforest gradually become thin and give way to woodlands and then to grasslands. These regions of tall coarse grasses and short trees are known as savanna or tropical grasslands. The southeastern part of the African plateau, lying south of the Tropic of Capricorn, falls within a temperate zone. Here, there are areas of moderate rainfall where temperate grasslands are found. The temperate grasslands are colder and somewhat drier than the tropical grasslands. Hence, the grasses here are usually shorter and less dense than those of the tropical grasslands. Trees are almost absent. The temperate grasslands of southeastern Africa are called veldt. Rivers. There are many rivers in Africa. Most of them rise in the central equatorial region. This region has the maximum number of rivers because it receives the heaviest rainfall. Most of the rivers of Africa flow through the plateau region. They descend steep slopes before entering the sea. That is why there are many waterfalls, making the rivers unsuitable for navigation. The Victoria Falls on the river Zambezi and the Boyoma Falls on the river Congo are among the largest waterfalls. The Nile is the most important African river. Which is the most important African river? The Nile is the most important African river. It is the world's longest river, about 6,670 kilometers. The Nile originates from Lake Victoria, the largest lake in Africa, and flows across the Sahara Desert to the Mediterranean Sea. Even though most of its path lies in the Sahara Desert, the Nile is never dry as its source lies in the rainy equatorial region. Even though most of its path lies in the Sahara Desert, the Nile is never dry as its source lies in the rainy equatorial region. The Nile has many tributaries. The Nile and its tributaries together form a large basin. The Nile is used not only for irrigation, the dry areas of the Sahara along its banks, but also for navigation and power generation. The Aswan High Dam on the Nile is important for irrigation, flood control, and power generation. The Congo is another important river. It rises in the rainy equatorial region of Central Africa and flows into the Atlantic Ocean. Among all the African rivers, the Congo carries the largest volume of water to the ocean. This is because its basin receives the heaviest amount of rainfall. The Niger, the Zambezi, and the Orange are other important rivers of Africa. The Niger, the chief river in the western region, is often dry because it rises in and flows through dry areas. Because it rises in and flows through dry areas. The Kariba Dam on the Zambezi is an important hydroelectric project. The area around Lake Chad is a region of inland drainage. The area around Lake Chad is a region of inland drainage because a number of rivers flow into the lake instead of flowing into the sea. Thus, even though this area lies in the Sahara Desert, it is not too dry. Here I am going to wind up this video. The remaining topic of this chapter we learn next video. Thank you.